behaviors necessary to produce specific performance statements. That is, I'm going to rephrase that. An individual's belief his or her capacity to learn something. That's what that says. Confidence in the ability to exert control over one's own motivation, behavior, and social environment. So, depending on your own self-efficacy, depends upon whether you has an impact on your ability to learn. Of course, that can change on the learning environment and what you're asking to learn, and your knowledge base when you're coming into the class. So for some people, they have a different knowledge base, because their expectation of what they're going to take out of this lecture would be different than somebody who has much more experience. I think, anybody disagree with that? No. The other thing that I think karate instructors forget is that if you don't teach something that does not need teaching. If you teach something that does not need teaching, that will have a negative impact. You will have a negative impact on motivation. And we talked a little bit about that in the beginning class. One of the questions that was asked was about what do you do with a class full of a bunch of ranks, the only person there, and how do you manage that class? Well, you manage expectation. You manage expectation of how, you've got to put walking across the camera, so guys, one side or the other. Choose to let that hold still. Because if you walk across the camera, it ruins the video. Okay? So we got to, Brian, can you open that door over there? Is that door unlocked? Somebody go through there and open that door, and if you need to walk, you walk through that door and around behind everything so we don't mess up the camera. Mike and Tondi, we just discussed about walking across the front of the camera. I think Brian
camera's there, right?
That's Brian Pendleton's chair.
Do you want me to start over with the recording?
Well, hey, don't teach. If you teach something that's not teaching, it has a negative impact. There are some courses that we teach. Now, I need somebody there to stop anybody from walking over it. Who is comfortable with the authority of sending people around the other way.
I got it. No. I'm going to go around. Sorry, Carol. That's in the office.
I'm on page 1. Steve, I'm on page 1. That's not, if you want, there's not in here, this here. This is the only one that exists. It's called a list of things you don't want to forget to tell in class. But all too often, we get a group of people, all I try to teach things that don't need to be taught, and what we do is we ruin your motivation. We just need to be careful with that. Alright, so this is about prearranged and Kumite. Do we do prearranged and Kumite? Yes or no? Do we do a bunch of it? What do we do? What do we actually do with our Ippon Kumite?
Line and Kumite?
Huh?
Line and Kumite?
Yeah. Well, I was thinking a little more specifics.
Right?
Less generality. We do the 32. How many do the 32? How many do other than 32? Well, you see, you're teaching to the test, you're not teaching to the concept. Okay? This is what you have to understand. So I put this design out. You see 32 months here? Do you see a bunch of stuff you don't know written here? You see a bunch of stuff you do know written here. Some are going to be yes, some are going to be no. You see everything you know or part of what you know. How are we going to get more notes? Okay, so the point is that a lot of this stuff right here is the background to the test. This is what you studied. The 32 is what we tested on. Why did we test on 32? Well, first off, Anderson took the different things he did. He put in a group of 32, and he did it by subject matter. So if you do the linear draws, you're just doing the linear draws that he put out. But that doesn't mean those are the only leading draws. There's a whole bunch of them. You know, the one hand defenders, the direct kicking counters. Those are just a sampling. And so what you really should be doing in your dojo is teaching the full impact of the direct kicking counters. And then where do you go? And then the 32 become the direction in which ones you should probably test. Now, when we did group testing, the 32, we instituted that in group testing so that Lance's students don't do more fun stuff than my students. And then my students wondering why they're not learning what he does, but then he sees there's his students that worry about what I do, because I might do one thing that's more fun than what he does. So his students get mad at him, my students get mad at me, or we both go bragging that our students are better than everybody else because they do better one-steps. Can you see that happening? Right? Well, yeah, when you got 12 to 20 karate schools at any one time coming to test, how do you do a test and keep all that out of it? So we utilized the 32, and we divided the 32 up, and, you know, so you did what? Like 12 for blue belt, green belts respectively, 16, purple belts 4, and of course black belts goes into a ball. And so the numbers work well as 4, 8, 16, 24, 28, 30, it just all worked. So that was what was done. Then what happens is people start to teach to the test. And over time, the idea of what the 32 represented is lost, and they become the thing. You follow me? So, if you ask somebody to do 32, or you ask somebody to do 4 linear draws, today, since we're not doing group testing, doesn't make that much difference. If they can demonstrate the concept of linear draw, isn't that the whole point? Now, I personally think that the first 8 are pretty standard, used by a lot of people who do Kumite. They're pretty standard used across a broad version of this country. And so those are good ones to know. Okay? And then some of them are a little more esoteric. Some of them are a little harder for people to learn. Okay? And if you go back to Okada, we do Ippon Kumite, just not in Okada. Why did we do that? I thought Okada covered everything. I thought the Kwanmukan was the epitome of everything you need to know the Kwanmukan. Yet we've discovered in other sessions like this that there's stuff that isn't in that form that we do. And then we test on it. There's an incongruity there, there's a disconnect. So I think we need to put this all into context, and that's what we're trying to do this weekend. So, we're going to go way back, but not completely far back. So we're not going to go back to the old Kim and Mark Meekers, but we're going to go back to the 10 primary Ippon Kumite. Does anybody know what they are? So we need somebody to demonstrate those. I don't want to have to do all the demonstration. You need to go around and go through that door and out the other door.
Yes, sir.
Okay, because there's a camera there. All right. So what are the first 10 Ippon Kumite? And why? What were they and why? They've gone out the window a little bit. They were using the initial testing, group testing. They were in the initial group testing because we allow people to do those. When? At the white belt, yellow belt, up to yellow belt level, we instituted the 32 at the blue belt, if I remember correctly, initially. So they shouldn't be that far from everybody's thing. And the first step, you know, in most people's Ippon Kumite was I defend. They use the front stance and step straight back. Well, that doesn't make a lot of sense, other than the fact that you're trying to learn how to do a high defend. And it gives you a social environment to do that in. Social meaning partner. Okay? Some people argue that the kata were initially two-person things that basically got the same thing that happened with the 32 happened with the kata. So they became exercises that kind of became more the thing than the extra stuff. So you did it with partners, and then you did have a partner, so you practiced the parts, and then the parts became the thing and not the partner practice. Because you always had to have a partner to do the practice, because you didn't have the partner, then you know how to practice. So then you have the kata. Now, whether that's true or not, nobody really knows, but there's that theory as to how the kata came about. All right. So, what do you think the first thing, if you were to teach somebody one self-defense move? Self-defense. What do you think the most important thing they should be able to do?
Your hands up.
I want to say get out of the way. Get out of the way. The hands are going to go up anyways, Lance. They're going to go up. Get out of the way. If you're going to teach anybody anything, if you're out of the way, the guy can't get to you, right? Get out of the way and run. That's one way of teaching it. Okay? If you're in Kumite and the guy's attacking you, what are you going to teach your guy to do? Slam back in at him? The modern theory is to do what? Get out of the way. Out of the way. The body shift, the taisabaki. So from my concept of today, I want you to think of it in that sense. You may have your own personal preferences, but think of a sense of getting out of the way. Now, do people step and punch? Does that actually happen? In the real world? Yeah. Because most people throw a punch off balance, and what happens when you throw an off balance punch? You step forward. So the idea of the leg coming forward off an off balance punch can happen. Especially if it misses. And that's what you wanted to do. That's why you get out of the way. Because if you get out of the way to hit you, you're probably not going to step forward because that's going to take the momentum away. It's the missing that creates the momentum when the foot goes forward. Can you picture that? So let's take that as our learning context today for this part, and let's work out that. That was someone used you, so come on up. Do it this way. So we're doing it. We're going to do it in the fashion of the Kumite. Okay. We can do this in other fashions. We can make it a grab. We can do different kinds of contexts. We're going to do it in the context of the Kumite because that's what we teach our students, and that's what this is about. To review the types of things that we do. Do that. So he does that. I'm out of the way. I am out of the way. I'm getting behind him, which is a good place to be, and I have a shield. Good. Move. I didn't throw you. I just moved. And he goes, he's going to roll anyways. He didn't want to roll on the wall. But the point is, so I can move him with me. All right? So you see the fact. So we're like this. You're going to do the subject. I'm out of the way. We used to teach that in our fighting. And so we use the Tenepon Kumite as a formal. We use it in an informal, semi-free fashion, we call it that. And we did it with single and double counters. Okay, and then our single and double counters did what? Who remembers that? It was a mantra. I do my double counters with hit, move, hit. Hit, move, hit. We were doing that. Kanazawa came in. We watched Kanazawa's Ippon Kumite, and Anderson used that as a justification for hit, move, hit. Because essentially what Kanazawa was doing. So that if I'm here, and I just do a so one, this one just and I move here and I hit him, where's he going to attack? Right where I was. And I'm going to move. Okay? So if you think about it, it's like if a bee stings you, you scratch your head or you stop when a bee stings you. You're going to go for pain, right? So if you get hit, your attention is drawn to where you're getting hit, and then the idea is the opponent needs to move. Okay? And then we have the idea in Kwanmu 3 of the 3 punches. Okay? Or Kwanmukan rather than 3 punches. So that as Alex attacks, okay, or let's do 3 punches. So if I'm attacking Alex, I fire this way, I fire that way, I fire this way. I have a crossfire. I have a set up ambush. So if the guy's coming this way, you have one line of fire this way, one line of fire this way, and one line of fire off center, your people don't shoot each other. Now, if you set your firing lines up that way, the person's going to have to walk through one of the lines of fire. Because you got a line of fire going this way, you got a line of fire going that way, and one down here. So they're going to come into the crossfire. So we can bring that kind of concept into our Ippon Kumite. So basically, the first 10 is just simply using it as a karate stance. Fastest way to move out of the way is to move your foot here. It moves your upper body. And so I have 1 punch, or to do a more karate like. What else do we do from here? Roundhouse, side kick, right? And then we have the other side. That gives us 6. So then the other way we did it was to slide sideways and front kick. Okay? And then the other way that we originally did it was that the punch came in, we draw the shoulder back and punch from here. Today most people do it this way. They do it off the sliding action. So those are your primary Ippon Kumite. So then we looked at those. Okay, so now we're going to do it semi-free. So, he gets to attack at will. The other way was control, wasn't it? Right? So, somewhere in there, I think I put Anderson's delineation of Ippon Kumite. So, I'm paraphrasing that. So, if you want to use that as a reference to what I'm talking about, you can find it in there. I'll up the scale on your Ippon Kumite. So, from here, 1, 2, 3, and then the other side. 4, 5. You know they work. 5 on one side, 5 on the other. You want to do number 5, just both sides. Then we took those same ideas into the concept of hit, move, hit. So it became our schema, so to speak, for the development of hit, move, hit. Okay, whether it was the best one or not, I don't know. It's the one I know. It's not necessarily, maybe there were better ones out there, some of you guys have found them. But basically, so I started my basic Ippon Kumite. Why? Because I need to feed it to the beginning students so they can understand it. If they don't understand the semi-free, which was done at the higher rank level, we would do that because we're moving like this and he's attacking a will, and, so that kind of you want to overload the brain, right? So then we go back to the formal situation. And of course, the formal situation can be controlled by the instructor. Fight! 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 ABC. So you can wean the student off of that, right? So there's a weaning process, so you're counting the numbers as you progress through this. It's a process of helping develop the skill. So we would call that a worked example. Meaning that the example is worked out for you, and you perform it until you understand it. Then you're capable of progressing. Now that's a concept of teaching math. But they think a worked example teaches math faster than the teaching parts and let the student figure out how to put it together to solve a math problem. So it is a theory of learning. So when I do this here, this is what happened. This is what happened at the testing. I'm going to do it with high pen because we let people do it on double counters. We would get this. Hi. Hi. Ready? Hi. Hi. I mean, everything got to be a back fist. Well, that kind of defeated the purpose of that. All right? So we tried to get people to do it this way. And I do it this way. I don't know if everybody else does. Okay, so as I block 1, I hit here, fire to here. Nothing because I'm kind of all this video. Did you see what I did? Definitely a body shift. Definitely use the Tyson block and hit your hip. Okay? The roundhouse kick. Kick. So, what I did with my students, and I don't think everybody in Kwanmukan did, is I defined them, they would do punch, punch, roundhouse, side kick, following the basic pattern of the first 10 of what we call the primary Kumite at the time. Okay? And that got rid of the actress every time, and it made people do hit, move, hit. So that's a construct that I used. It's not necessarily a construct that other Shihan use. Okay? But that's what I saw, and that's what I addressed. And I think it's worth you guys thinking about if you haven't done that, to explore that. And then it got more complicated. Funny things. Hey! Doing it from a free finding movement. You see, we did the same thing. And the only difference is this requires you to step this way. This requires you to step that way. So all you really had to do was squeeze your thighs together and move. Because the mere act of doing that turns my body. Because the punch will pass through. Now, interestingly enough, if you do it this way, you see, watch my upper body. See it move? Watch my upper body. Oops. There it moves. Right, there it moves. It moved the same way, didn't it? In one instance, I did this, the other instance, I did that. I moved this leg instead of this leg. And the net effect is my body quickly is out of the range of the technique. Here, boom, and there I go. I'm back to the idea of shielding, back to the idea of being in a position of advantage, which is what Punch Anderson taught about the releases and about his self-defense things that he was treated, what we taught for women's self-defense and other things like that at the time. Okay, something has been refined today. There are some programs that approach it a different way, but that tells you what the thinking was then. So that was the first 10, Ippon Kumite. Okay, and that's single and double counters. Okay, free and semi-free. So it's 40 different things totally to do. But they're conceptual of itself, a conceptual framework in which to practice within, but not the only one. Okay? So now, during that period of time, you would also teach in groups. Okay? So, hey! 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 Let's see if somebody opens up. Hey! And so he would take a movement, knife hand block, this way, and he would do it all sorts of different ways. And then he would progress that concept to a teaching circumstance, so that where you can use that to explore the entire way of the movement. And we used to do that at the University of Akron back in the 70s. Okay? And so for us that saw that, this kind of was more reflective of Anderson's approach to teaching. So that's a whole series, I can't remember them all, but there's a whole series of that today that nobody does. It was just simply a teaching system for learning how to do this. So, in other words, you block this way, and you block this way. That's all. But then you might do this. 1, 2. Because you're bringing your hand back, right? So you practice something to hand back. You need something to bring your hand this way. So this could be this way. So this could be your hands out here, and you just go in like that. Or whatever. He would explore that concept. And then you would get the value of his exploration. And you guys can do that on your own. I think most of you are smart enough to do that. And take an idea like that and just see what you do. Okay? So, we get to some of the other ideas of the Kumite that I put out there. So I talked about the single and double counter, formal and informal, the concept of hit, move, hit. Okay, so who's going to show me? So let's, back there on that chart, who's ever back there, the big one, the one with the color on it, that's faded, the 32 month slips are written. Okay, I'll show you. No, yeah, it's on that chart. You just have to know where it's at. Right here. Okay, so you're going to read those.
Okay.
Nice and loud.
I think it says first here. Linear draws,
Keep going.
oblique draws, kawashis, crossovers, direct kick counters, front leg skip kicks, rear leg jump kicks, drop downs.
Does that ring a bell to anybody? What is that? What did you just read? Yeah, the 8 categories of the 32. Okay? So, do we see one hand defense in there? Okay. Somebody do the flashes. Everybody here has had been tested on the flashes at one time or
I'll
another.
do them with somebody.
It takes two people. So will somebody demonstrate the flashes?
Do you think it's
Oh.
Hey, hey,
Do you see an element of one-hand defense here? Keep going.
hey,
Not so much that one, but the first one definitely. Keep going. Hey!
hey.
You see an element of Taisabaki. That's it. That's it. But you see, the first one was definitely a one-hand defense. Is that right? One hand defended and attacked at the same time. So Chris and I didn't have this conversation before class because he's going to come up and demonstrate 12 different ones. And Zach can attack for him. 12 different one-hand defense. Too close to another one. Keep going. I don't know if I really want to get in that one or not. I know, but yeah, I think that was gypsy. Keep going. Okay, that's it. All right, but you get the idea. So you see, you have all these one-hand defense. So one of them made it to 32. But if you should be studying one-hand defense. Okay? So, Zach, you got to kind of approach it this way. This way, this way, this way, underneath, this way, so you've got both hands on both sides. Okay, so you start doing that, you're going to come up with a lot more. This way, the one you did here is fine, the Anderson one where it came back like that. Okay, and so, you start looking at it. You got another one where exactly punch. You didn't punch. So I hit him. All right, but you know, the elbow thing, where some of us remember was nasty. But you, okay. All right, but you see, one-hand defense. All right, this is the thing. That, so you practice one-hand defense. It doesn't mean in the dojo all you teach is just your 32. You teach the concepts. Those are designed to give you the concepts. But you know, if you start to refine it, when you look at the Kawashis, there's an element of Taisabaki, there's an element of one-hand defense, and there's an element of some other things in there. So you see, that kind of combined two different ones. Okay, what about direct kicking counters? Who's going to demonstrate the direct kicking counters? You want to try it? No, I'm looking at Jeff. This is a little outside of development, but I'm looking at him because I know he's got an idea in his head. I can read your body language that well. Okay? Who's going to get kicked? It doesn't have to be from this side. Somebody from this side can get kicked. Because this side's the one that's getting hit all the time. Just think. You have all the information, you just have to put it together. Wait a minute. What are we going to make him do? Are we going to make him do it the way he wants to do it, or the way we make our students do it? I'm serious. We're talking about a concept that we practice in a formal circumstance. Now, he was suddenly shifting his weight for the kick he wanted to do. Wasn't he? And trying to disguise it a little bit, I think. But we don't let our students do that, do we? Maybe we should. But we'll let you get away with it. Okay. Hey, Sheila! Just don't kill Steve in the process. That's okay, keep going. We'll come back to that. I know what you're trying to do. All right, let's sit down. Let's sit down. That's good enough for information. So, what elements do we see? What were the things that he did in the direct kicking counters that is the purpose of learning the direct kicking counters? He did some that were in the 32. He did at least one that was in the 32. Tried another one that was in the 32.
He has to shift his body to get out of the way and get the correct angle.
Maybe. I don't know. I think on some of them yes, on some of them no. My answer is what else? You guys have been in a session with George Anderson. Think. Go back. Play the video in your head. We'll get you in a second. Let's try to make this crowd come up with it. Go ahead. We'll wait for
Everybody's learning how to turn the hips out of the attacking opponent because everything to do with the Nahanshi technicality.
Okay. What else? He attacked the connections.
Yes.
What your technique didn't hit a connection, it just slammed his rib cage. The connection would have been the heel right here because the body will collapse right here. The body collapses on itself. You smash it here. So most of his direct kicking counters were attacking the connections, including getting the knee before he completed the step, over back like this, and bending it backwards, which he had to do, which was done very carefully. So the direct kicking counters were kicking techniques that immediately attack the person when they begun to attack or attack. As you try to pick someone up on the attack, which I don't know if people got that or not, rather than let the attack develop and then pick them up at the end of the attack. Okay, two different things. If you're working with your beginners and teaching the concept, you're probably not going to have them do what he did. You're probably going to have them do more plain vanilla control the Kumite. You have an idea of what the kicking counters are, the direct kicking counters. So if you practice the direct kicking counters, most of you know what the connections are. You can start doing kicks on your own, learn what works for you, and with your students as to what your students should do. So when you come and you do the 32, you do direct kicking counters, what are you demonstrating? That you understand the concept of direct kicking counters, not just do the 4 that are prescribed. That is a different thing. Okay, let's see the linear draw.
One step further.
It's nice to see them volunteer. Linear draw. What did he do? No, that's okay. Do it again. Do it again. Do it again. Do it exactly what you did. Not really. The idea of linear draw. Back from the attack, back from the attack, and then in. Now, do you move to here, do you move to here, or you move to here? You've probably heard all 3. All I'm going to tell you to do is go back and watch Anderson's videos and answer that question. You will see how he did it. You will see that how he described it is not how he does it. And I think if you see that on your own, you need to look at it. But basically, it's a drawing of the action and then a follow through with the body. Now, in my context, because I do a lot of throwing, I move the linear draw on a slight angle because it opens up for throwing. Okay? Now, some people put the foot here, but there's no way I'm going to put the foot here and bend all the way down to here to punch him. So, I'm probably going to back up more because this enables me to get low enough to take this punch on the person that's small and then come in. Because I'm adjusting it from my body to his body. And you'll see Anderson demonstrate it this way, and you see when he does it fast, he doesn't do it that way. So you see, I'm not sure why that's the case. I mean, I have my thoughts. I think you should have your own thoughts. And that should be the subject of a further discussion. But basically, that's the idea of linear draw. Would that be called a linear draw? Oblique linear draw? What are the oblique linear draws?
Third set of 4.
Huh?
Third set of 4.
Yeah. Did you say first, second set of 4?
Third set of 4. 9 through 12 is the oblique linear draw.
Okay, so let's see those. Not the Kawashis. The oblique draw step. The oblique draw step. He's doing that with the Kawashis. That's what some people call the Kawashis. So, what's the distinguishing characteristic between the two? Sometimes, what do you see as a distinguishing characteristic? One moves on an angle, one moves straight forward, but I leave you draw on an angle, but yet I'm moving back. But you know, is it in relation to me? Is it in relation to the partners? What tells what's linear? Linear doesn't necessarily mean I step straight back. Meaning, he's here, both my nose there, this coming here, this is linear. It doesn't have to mean that. It just means you back a little bit, you move in a little bit. Okay. Are you guys following what I'm doing? I'm not trying to, I'm suggesting ideas. I'm not suggesting dogma. So we have 32 Ippon Kumite that have ideas. So, what are the was the jump kicks? You have jump kicks and double jump kicks. Right? What do they call them? Read that on the chart, exactly what it's phrased.
You got the front leg skip kicks, then you go rear leg jump kicks.
Okay, so what does that mean? What are we studying there? Who's going to demonstrate that? Good. Who's going to attack for him?
Hey! 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 Hey!
You okay?
Fine.
All right, I was going to say,
Yeah.
move away from the crack. So we don't get you.
Hey! 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 Hey!
And what are the other ones?
Hey!
We had two, right?
Skip kick, sir?
What do we call them?
One is a jump kick, the other is a flying kick.
No, I'm talking about the chart. What's the chart say?
Rear leg jump kicks.
Okay, so rear leg jump kicks. What do I call them like those? I don't even know. What do I call them, Alex?
Skip it.
I call them skip kicks. Anybody else change the name?
Drift kicks.
What do you call them?
Or kids we call them dragon runners. Dragon foot.
That sounds good. What else? I didn't hear what you said, Lance.
Drift kicks.
Drift kicking.
Following kicks.
Pardon?
Following kicks.
Falling kick. Falling kick, drift kicks. What Alex said, I've heard Anderson use all those names. You should throw one down because they pick one. But you get the idea. You have to make choices. Okay? And sometimes you have a good idea that doesn't fit. So you can't do the good idea. You have to save it for some other time and place. Okay, but we didn't see the drift kicks, skip kicks. Who's going to do? I thought you guys were going to do both of those.
Hey! Hey! Hey!
Okay.
Hey! 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 Hey!
Okay.
Hey!
Now, hey, let's sit down. Why did you do those formally? Why did you do those formally? Ever done formal? You stood up like this every single time. Do you think maybe they would have worked? Maybe they would have worked from a different stance? Who said all 32 had to be done formally? When did the formal attacks break down into 32? The first 8, probably. Maybe the next 12, and after that, maybe 2 more in here if you're following on order, and it starts to fall apart. They don't work well with formal Ippon Kumite. Which when you did fine, but still did. You wanted to say something.
Mr. Anderson has specifically stated that the first 4 of the 32 are done in a formal position. The reason for that is they're taught the lower ranks. We teach the lower ranks to send an attention because it forces a focus and an attention to the attack. All the defense after that can be done right or left, leg forward, or kumite kamae as it were.
Right?
You can't do some of the attacks in a front stance, that's for sure. because you got to do some kicking attacks, you know. So you can free the movement up, but we've become too much teaching to the standard instead of understanding what the concept is that the standard was supposed to represent. It represented the concepts that have become institutionalized as a standard. Okay? Now, let's see who wants to get kicked here. Where's that? Here's the original way. Just change your stance. No, front stance. Change your front foot. Put your hand behind your back. Give a better front stance than that. Good. Actually, leave it. Oh, please leave it. That was it. That's the first one. Second one. Third one. Fourth one. Now, from that, we moved them. But that's how you learned it. Now look at this. Beginner. When he did his, what was his timing? What was his timing? When was the contact made? As his foot hit the ground. The second step was like this. The third step was like this. Same time. The fourth step was like this. Try to hit him before he hoisted the ground. So we had a stage of that, and we actually practiced through that process for each kick. So then you got to go like this, the roundhouse kick. And I hit him before we hoisted the ground. If I don't move my hips right, it doesn't work. This was what we did. This was our, read the titles again, I can't remember. Read the titles.
Kick wise, the rear or front leg skip kicks and the rear leg jump kicks.
Front leg skip kick, rear leg jump kicks. Now I only did the rear leg kicks. So we still have to say, how do we progress this to the other ones? Because they're the same thing. Because the rear leg kick becomes, after you jump, and you do a double jump kick, you still have to, you see that, put your hand out. Right? Okay. And I deliberately missed them. Okay, and I cut the technique that way. You see? So this is what they were. This was the teaching of those. These taught what is now the 32 of the standards. And you see, I had a different kind of timing. Now I'll try to do one like I could do when I was younger. All right, I'll do it from a double jump kick perspective. Somebody kicked this leg. I hit him hopefully with my leg tucked. Was it tucked? I don't know what you tell you. You guys said it was wrong with this stuff. Where was my leg when I made contact? Huh? It was slightly the other way down. I wanted it to be tucked, but it was slightly the other way down. And that's where it was in the other ones too. I know what they were, but you need to know what they were. So, now, do we have people that can jump us into your class?
Yes, sir.
Do we have people who can't jump?
Yes, sir.
How are you going to teach us?
Okay.
I don't want you to do it. I want you to show me how you're going to teach it. Because now you have students who can jump, who can't jump, and you're going to teach them a concept of kicking with the rear leg. So, you're teaching us how you want us to do it. This is your assignment now. I don't want to see you do it. I don't need to demonstrate it. I want you to speak to the class, because you asked this question earlier, and I want to see how well you've developed your approach to the problem you presented. So you've got this group over here that can't jump, and this group over here that can jump, and the guys back there sitting down that can really jump. So let's go.
Okay, so you want me to teach the rear leg?
Yeah, just do the one, just do the front kick one, that's fine. The same approach is going to happen for all of them.
So, this one?
Yeah, well, okay, but I can't do that. I can't skip.
Then I just have to hop. I just
I
have
can't hop.
We'll do some jumping jacks. Work on that. And then we can jump forward. Just moving up.
If I'm 10 years old, that's not fun.
Get the extra hand.
Well, no, I'm just showing how you do the skill.
How would I do this skill?
Oh, yeah. Okay, all right.
I don't teach any 10-year-olds. Ours is.
I know, but it's to get your mind thinking. You understand? I'm trying to make you think. Exactly right. I'm trying to make you think. There's no answers. Some of this stuff, there's no answers. It's just how you approach it. So, can't jump. Good enough. Do it your way. Maybe better here. Okay. All right, I got to get some aggression on these kids who drive me crazy. If I don't make them use their muscles, I'm going to have a horrible class lesson tonight. The parents will be happy because they don't go home tired and go to bed. All right, so I start here. And I do that. If you want to learn how to do that, go study a hurdle. There's a drill like that they use for hurdles. So you see, I just did it a couple different ways, didn't I? So I would manage the class certification, because if you have people who can't jump, you can't make them jump. So can they skip? If they can't skip, if they can skip, have them skip. If they can't skip, have them take a walking step. If they can't do that, have them stay here and get. Because there's no way in hell that somebody's going to stand back here, he's going to attack me, and I'm going to jump and kick him. That's not what this is about. The punch becomes a context, it becomes a focus. Okay? And then you're just having your people do exercise. So those that jump, you jump. Those that don't jump, you have the exercise work for that. But ideally, they all learn to direct kick with the back leg. That's the point of it.
Part of what you could actually do is go
Louder. Louder.
I'm sorry. Part of it, what you can do is go back into our original form of practicing jump jumps. So you have people who don't jump. We would have somebody on their hands and knees going back and forth. You can't do that. So you lie the person out flat. That's still too high. So you put a belt out, throw it on. And you start developing the jump jumps. And if you'll recall, coming across and switching the feet. Then the jump and the turn. All of those which are held within the concept of the jumping. If you do, you see, have somebody who doesn't jump, you teach them how to start developing the ankles, how to start getting into the calves, how to start developing the muscles that are necessary for the jump, and not using muscles that are unnecessary and getting into isolation.
You mind coming out here and hang on the ground?
Watch it.
You may move over just a little bit further. You lay down right here. Lay down. You tie you up.
Wait.
And come on up. No, you're here.
Wait.
All right, you stand up. Now, you guys are going to hop. That's important. You're going to hop over here. He's going to hop over here. And she's going to hop over the belt. So go. Watch. Now, what we actually do in our dojo is if you look over there, you see the yellow thing on top of the red thing, and the blue thing, and the green thing, right? We have hop over the green thing. It's about 3 feet wide. Now, so the point is, what I'm trying to show is that can do the hop on one leg and turn and that, and there's other ways of doing it. But if you do this as we did, it was a plyometric exercise. So that means you start the exercise and you don't stop till a predetermined number. Either the exercise fails or you stop. Because you want to preload your muscle and take off. You still do that, pop, 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 pop. Without stopping. No. Okay, so you want to do that? Alex? That's what he's here for.
I don't think I can decide.
Just keep popping back and forth.
Okay. I totally won't nice.
Going over his feet, go over his back.
I don't know.
Just go over here. Go to the part of that. Now that's the hardest way, but you notice a couple of times he did 2 hops. But it's still getting a plyometric effect. And then you do all the exercises that way. So that was what that original drill was. I did that drill one time in class and ended up having to go out to a soccer team and teach the same thing to soccer players. Because the coach said that's a great drill for soccer players. And hauled me out and so I taught the same drills to soccer players. So, what we're trying to hopefully get out of this.
I think something that also needs to be added in regards to plyometric exercise. Plyometric exercise is designed to be the icing on the cake. It should not be the primary form of training where you destroy the body. So you have to develop the connections first, which can be done by just going over the single line. But plyometrics are finalization, and many times if they're done too much, you'll join the brotherhood and sisterhood of hip replacements.
We will get more into plyometric exercises in the Kumite section.
Sure.
Okay, so when we actually talk about Kumite, fusion Kumite, we will do more of the plyometrics. Okay? That kind of got sidetracked into that because of what we're talking about and other things. So, what you need to do, without going, because we got a time constraint here too, is that we talked about different series of the 32 one-steps. I showed you where the one-step, the kick off, the rear foot kick, or whatever you want to call it, the drifting, and then the double jump kick, where they came from. They came from a drill. Now, I don't know where Hatchie Anderson got the drill. I suspect he saw somebody do it and developed it or copied it one or the other. I don't know that he actually did that on his own. It is possible that that was on his own. The point is that we took that and we took the result of that, what that was designed to teach you to do. Jump off the back leg, okay? Do a double jump kick. People tried to do double jump kicks, so we taught it. I know, again, you can argue over whether it means anything in free fighting, okay? Or any kind of fight for that matter, but it's a thing. So, take that, put it into 32. The 32 becomes your kata of Ippon Kumite. Your schema. The 30 is what you can learn that as 32 different things, or as one thing. As you get better at it, it becomes one thing. Or maybe it's going to be 8 things. Or just 8. All right? You know, as you put the concepts in his head. But you should be able to treat it as 8. At least 8 sets of contact, or less. So that you come out here and you perform the concept of it. So the test was designed to show the concept of what each of those subject matters were about. Not designed to be the subject matter of itself, in and of itself. It's not the subject matter. It's a conceptual framework, if you will, of the Ippon Kumite of the Kwanmukan. That when you went to your dojos, you taught what you wanted, and then when everybody came in, we used that as the quote indicators to see how the organization was doing as a whole. It was never meant to be the thing. Okay? I think it actually developed into that, which was one of the dangers of the way we did it, and we lost control of that over somewhere along the way.
In the 32 one-steps, what Mr. Anderson had pointed out, I believe it's in the manual as well, that the techniques that we use, the 4 techniques in each of the 8 groupings, are not definitive techniques. They are representative of what we have decided are the best techniques to utilize in order to demonstrate that particular principle. So there's a multitude of ways to be able to do linear draw, to do the foot shifting, These just happen to be the techniques that Kwanmukan has decided to use because they exemplify the concept.
All right, now, you get the 3-star sparring. 3-step sparring. Sanban Kumite. Sanban Waza. Who's going to demonstrate that? We're going to have to get better at this because when we get to the kata, you guys got to demonstrate the kata. So we've got to get used to getting in front of people. We're just warming you up for the big show here. So let's go. Well, she's volunteering for one part of it. Oh, that's the other end. I have no idea who's doing what. So we'll see.
Hey. Hey.
Todd, would you punch her? Don't just walk.
Yes, sir. Hey.
Is that all as fast as you can do that? Go faster.
Yes, sir. Hey.
Now you know what I want you to do.
Yes,
Do
sir.
it.
Hey.
What is the difference between all that? There are a whole bunch of crap just happened. What happened? What happened? Well, the first time they do it, that was what? Like beginner level, wasn't it? It was just 1, and then 1, and then 1.
Hey.
Okay, now he speeded it up a little bit. And I will give you credit. You tried to stick to the form that you were taught. She tried to stick to basic form. The third time, it fell apart. And then, once she knew she was okay to do it, she then just did it and didn't worry about framing each stance. It's the only way it can be done when somebody's coming after you. You cannot frame each stance. So then your foot pattern starts to split, change. You know, and this goes down to learning technique and learning skills. Okay, you know, you have to do the skills under pressure, you can't do them under pressure. How can you perform under adrenal stress if you don't practice under adrenal stress? The Kumite is great for adrenal stress for some people, but not for everybody. Why? Because good competitors are socialized to it to eat up the adrenal stress. Is that what you're going to say? No. Okay. Well, I'll say mine, you say yours. Okay. So sometimes the competitors can think that's the environment they want to be in. And they're able to take that adrenal stress, make it their own, and control what they do and perform. And use it to benefit them. Okay? That's not for everybody. That's difficult for some people. But for some very aggressive people, man, they just eat it right up. Some people are adrenaline freaks.
Part of what you're looking at is whether it's the Ippon Kumite or the Sanban Kumite, is limited timing. And I think the problem that many black belts have is they view this as something that is only what the defender is doing. No. The attacker is trying to develop a sense of rhythm and timing. I've started in Shotokan for a very brief time, but in Shotokan they specifically teach the stepping and the attacking. So it's a 1, 2, so that you can overpower your opponent. The idea in this is you can't hit each other, but you're trying to develop a sense of being able to run roughshod right over the person who's defending. And you can't do this with a 1, 2, 3. And sometimes even 1, 2, 3, one right after the other. If you hit a 1, 2, 3. And that's an establishment also of the plyometric of how you load that foot up in order to be able to drive through that much faster.
Now, you can teach the 3-step sparring for different purposes. The purpose that he addressed is not necessarily the purpose for a beginner student.
No. Although they did teach us that in the very first time.
Well, yeah, he was never kind. I mean, he was never kind to us. He just made us do it.
No, I'm thinking when I trained with Peter Golden, I was at OU. Okazaki is the person who tested me for my belt ranking.
So you have the formal circumstance, and then you have the training effect. So the faster you go. So what really do you want? So I'm going to tell you again. For me, it doesn't necessarily mean it's for your Shihan, but it's just for me. I'm going to give you my career. Okay, I view the first one as the reaction. The second one is the third one is your attack. Okay, now use the same concept in Kumite. That you block the first one, as the second technique comes in, you situate your body so that your third technique is successful. I try to teach that approach to free fight. I try to teach that as a self-defense approach when you're surprised. If you're standing one-on-one, you know the guy's going to attack, it's a different game. Okay? Because your first reaction may be, and then you've got to immediately start to move to that position of advantage. So, you know, how people naturally react. Okay? Those that aren't trained to react. Okay? Experienced people that we saw on the fast defense doing some of the same things that they think they wouldn't do, but they did them. Okay? Loss of body function, things like that. We saw that. You can see on those videos the loss of motor skills as they drove the surge hit. Okay? So, we teach it different ways. The faster it comes at you, the more you have to disassociate, okay, your foot pattern from your upper body action. Okay, as you get higher and higher. The other thing you need to do is look at angle. So talk here a second. So I tend to do the first one very traditionally. While I do the 32 on a slight angle, I do not do the first one in this group as a slight angle. I go straight back. So let's just we'll take it to an analysis on the top. So the first one comes in. Okay. The second one comes in. But the third one, I need to cut it short. I don't step back here because it takes too much time. I am now moving to the side. Did you see my block? Did my block, for you guys that can see that, was my block before or after this foot hit the ground? You're not observing. I've been asking questions like that all afternoon. I'm trying to teach you what to look for. So here we go. 1, 2, and 3. What was my timing? On the very last one, what was my timing? What was the timing of my hand, my foot, my block, my attack? Let's try it again. I'm going to change it.
Your punch landed when his front foot.
I tried to punch it, well, this hand got in the way. I tried to punch it and then block. So I kind of bumped it, punched me off this punch. But yeah, but my punch is hitting before my foot. So that means that I have to have all the elements of a strong punch happening before my foot is on the ground. Or as much as I can. Because if my goal is to hit him as soon as I can, how long am I going to wait? I'm going to wait for me to finish that block if I don't have to? No, I'm going to hit him. So now you can use this as a drill. So the faster we get now, we're going to pretend we're moving fast. And I'm going to try to mimic it from here. 1, 2, look at this. And 3. I never did a full weight transfer in the second step. Because it takes too dang long to accomplish what I need to do. So you were starting to get it. Okay, once you just understood, you could just react. Okay? And so, you see, that the Ippon Kumite can teach many different things, a samba. Okay? The idea of blocking, the idea of the fact that if you do this, man, we had to do a kibadutch, I'm going to block this here. Block, and then hit. And you make us do it. Then you make us do it fast. So we cut our stepping short, what would you do? Yell at us for not doing it right, doing kibadutch. You know how hard it is to do a kibadutch from side to side, and so you block it and you punch it? It is not easy. And of course, we would try to do that. But at the end of the day, it made the shortcuts easier and better by trying to do the full action. I think, in the end, it worked well for us. Whether it worked well today in this modern teaching environment, I don't know. But it worked well for the group that comes through. So you see, you have this defined process, and you have the process that happens when you change a variable. You change the intensity, the duration, the speed. We talked about that a little bit in the first class. So how you vary what? Intensity, duration, number of repetitions, the technique. Right? And so you can experiment with that in your Ippon Kumite. But if the person can't complete a high defend with their upper body, you put them in a front stance or a stance that stabilizes this so they can figure out how to do this, and then you can have them do this while you move that. This is another thing the good Kumite fighters are very good at. Isolation of taking what they've learned and isolate it into the parts that they need to utilize. So this is Ippon Kumite, Sanban. Now, we used to do Sanban Kumite with throws. Somebody like to demonstrate those? And somebody else can do this.
This is my class happening in California right now, watching this continue, so if that's okay.
Sure. You understand, we're being broadcast to California. Somebody got to get up there. Who's going to get up? Somebody hasn't been up. Come on. We can get up. Some of the other guys can get up there. Who can take a fall? Nobody here can take a fall? Yeah, I want to. All right, Chris Hayden's up here. He finally got up. Get up here, man. You've already nailed it. He hasn't.
Neither that I remember from Shihan Airs.
Whatever it is, it's fine with me.
So, for the first one. Hey. That might be the only one I remember.
Anybody else remember any other ones? I mean, there are some ones that we taught. There's ones that we normally teach, and there's ones that every dojo has their own. Somebody else have one? He's one to take the ball, so this should be easy. All you gotta do is get up here and throw it. Sorry for standing up. Let's see one. Sir? Why don't you be the defender so I'll be the fourth? You'll be the fourth once, okay? Let's go. Thank you.
Hey!
Okay, some people have follow-throughs when you hit the ground.
Hey!
Okay.
How's it?
Yeah, I know, we cut that. He's just grabbing with his feet, so it's okay. So, that's the idea, right? And so that works very well with the first four, probably the second four, but it kind of falls apart. You're falling down through the 32 because the concept change, and they don't leave the person in a good throwing position. But then you have to think about your throw. And if you're trying to do a throw, and you're using the three-step, and then what you're doing is you're taking that person's brain and filling it full with a lot of non-germane material to what they need to do at the end of the thing, and forcing a bit of confusion on them, right, overload, and making them perform. So sometimes putting a person in an overload situation isn't a bad teaching tool. It depends what you're teaching. And unfortunately, if you're teaching the basics, it's totally negative. It's not going to work. Okay? But you take an experienced person and you want to test them. You want to produce confusion, adrenal stress, or whatever, then make the circumstance more complicated. Okay? So, Chris, I'm going to say, I'm not actually going to do this. We're going to pan them out. Okay? So he punches. Like once. Alright. You took off, so I followed. Okay, because I wouldn't have thrown him out there. There's no way I would have thrown him out there. So we used to have these. So he would attack 1, 2. Now, what I'm going to do from here is as he takes that step, I'm going to cut his head. I'm going to take him over here and punch his nose instead, right into the ground. The only thing you can do if you don't want to get hurt is roll. Right. We taught those before in the Symposium. Remember those? Yeah. We've taught them like this way, right? So 1, 2, 3. And if I keep turning, I have Mr. Anderson's technique he'd like to demonstrate. Now, did you notice that I didn't grab the hair that time? Right? If you were in the 70s, you got your hair grabbed. But by the 80s, we started cutting our hair short. So he started grabbing us around the neck instead of our hair. And let's just do that again. 1. Of course, we'd be doing these really fast. 1, 2. Okay. And we do the throw. Finish it up. Lock his arm. Paper position. George Anderson. We've all seen that, right? And then what? You grab these over top and sit down on you and crank your arm. Visualize it. That's all those were. They came out of that. Okay, for some of us, we just do a high. You can do these with one punch. So he does a high defend. Okay, I thought here you said punch on high defend. If I'm over here, or whatever I do, I'm back here, I have that kind of throw. All right, if I go like this, and my foot's on the outside, I'm going to take them this way, and I have that kind of throw. And if I'm going to do this, I have an Ippon Sinagi, and I'm taking him to the direction that he's going to fall. And if I have this kind of situation where you end up here, I'm going to go straight in and punch. Have I outbalanced it? And I don't know if that has that doesn't have a judo throw name. And that's why I have beginners who can't do this stuff. Right. 1, punch. 2, I put the punch in it and have them do this, so you don't have to go right directly to the strike. Now, all you have to do is walk 2 steps. And you'll fall down. So you see, now we have takedowns and we have throws. Right? The 2-step thing is your takedown. Anybody can do that. And we've done it both. We never distinguish the stuff between throws and takedowns. You just say do this and do that, and do this and do that, and we do whatever he'd ask for, or we would oftentimes walk it out. Because you can walk it out and fall all the way down with the guy. You just have to learn to keep your hip in contact with him. You keep your hip in contact with him, you just feel that. You don't have to think it, you just feel it. You sense it. And then you follow down through. That can be trained very easily, and that does use up a lot of brain power. Where you have to think you have to go out through, it takes just more thinking. Okay? So, you can do it with throws. You can do it with takedowns. And I'm sure there's some other ideas of takedowns that you can do. I mean, you can take the guy here, hit him, and bring him forward, which, some of the people I think demonstrated last night, I think, there was a forward pull down, you pull the guy out. You can do all these different things using your karate context for your students. But at some point, you have to kind of get more realistic because, again, these are teaching tools. They're not necessarily the end result that you want to have. Now, I wanted to talk one more thing, too, about some of the Ippon Kumite and some of the jump kicks that we did. I forgot to do that. All right, just hold your hand up. So when I go straight ahead, front kick, I'm going to go straight ahead. And if I do the roundhouse kick, do I go, which is actually the way I demonstrated it, or would I be better off to go like that? Right? And if I do a side kick, would I like this? Or would I go like this? And hit it from the side. And if I'm doing the back kick, am I going to go straight in? Or pop from the side? My attacks aren't always directly in. If I do this, we're doing the primary bottom kick. He's here, I step here. Okay? Yeah. Okay? But a lot of people do this. Then they want a side kick. This kick is in a roundhouse kick position. So a lot of times when I do this, I drift the kick rather than leave my foot there, so that I lined up and I can roundhouse kick them. If I side kick them, I just do this. I leave my foot there. And I just pick my foot up and pivot. Ready? Hey! Ah! He runs into it. I don't have to extend my leg. He just runs into it. You see, I'm using that. It's a shortcut. But is it a shortcut? Is the technique more efficient, and have I broken any of the rules of the technique? But I give him a little bit of an angle. Did you catch that? Some of you are nodding yes. So, 1, 2. You see? So then, pass. I tried to beat his technique. Those of you that heard the argument earlier today, did I pivot? Those of you that had a discussion, you should have been looking for that. If you didn't look for that, you just missed an opportunity to see if I do what I say or say what I do. Okay? This is just two different things. So this is the encompassing idea. Everything we talk about is the encompassing idea of Ippon Kumite within the Kwanmukan as it was practiced before the 32 were developed. And that I did that on purpose because you need to understand the utility of the 32 so that it doesn't become a teach to the test situation in the future, but becomes more of a synthesis of ideas, of concepts that you want your students to understand.
Man. So the initial 32, the initial 10, we're teaching the concept of moving offline. It's not a linear foot shift. Feet don't come into the same line. There's a slight off on the ankle. So as he's attacking, my first position is my back foot is facing towards him, so when I come in, my feet are facing the direction they're supposed to with a punch. The second one is he's attacking. Moving again, my foot is facing him, so I'm lined up with front kick. Remember, I'm talking about teaching beginners at this point. The third one, as he's attacking, I now step, so my foot is perpendicular to him, set, as Hanshi said, for the roundhouse kick. And the final, in order to facilitate the side kick, I teach the beginning student to turn the foot away, which will fold immediately into a side kick, and we're beyond having to worry about the pivot. They can get that as they get into a more advanced round.
Do any of you guys want to add anything on to what we talked about? Okay. Summarize what we talked about. No, I'm not going to.
Well, I think we
Come up, face the camera, and summarize what we've been saying today.
what I got from it, and just
No, I don't want what you got out of it. I want what we talked about.
don't be so dogmatic about the Ippon Kumite, the 32 Ippon Kumite, right? Their baseline to start training with.
Look at them, not me.
Right.
You're talking to them, you're not talking to me. You're summarizing it for them.
Yes, sir.
All right, well, I guess we're going to keep up here to embellish your discussion, so keep stay on right to time. And add on to what we just learned today.
For the most part, what I was getting from it is that you've been giving questions and trying to open up, that it's not set in stone. There's different approaches to all the 32, the way we've been instructed to do them. So each Shihan might do it slightly different in their respective schools, but the overall direction is still the same.
Don't look at me.
Right.
Okay, Mr. Order.
Yes. The Ippon Kumite is a framework that allows you to learn how to move, establish distancing, preset your techniques, following action. And as Todd said, don't be dogmatic about it. Allow it to be a framework to explore the kind of evolution of your variety, which is really based on that.
Mr. McKay.
I think it's important for us to understand that the Ippon Kumite are not supposed to be nailed down to one thing. I think we all like to practice them exactly every single time, but I think it's important for us to try to modify them according to, not only according to how we like to do them or according to how we see them done, but, you know, just to get something different out of them every time we do them. So if we kind of stick to the same way of doing them every single time, we'll always get nailed down to that, and then we won't be able to vary when we want to.
Mr. Whaler. We saved you for last. That was to make everybody else feel comfortable.
That's all I say for last.
I'm gonna say ditto to everything they said.
Summarize everything they said.
As we look at the 32 Ippons that we train, that we all fall susceptible of teaching to a test. And then we all think, oh, well, gradual promotion for the students in the dojo is, you know, learn, teach the 32, and then test to it. And then class somehow gets so condensed that, well, that's all you did. And you didn't take that opportunity to take those 32, those concepts, and build upon them. To take the variations, to take that direct kicking drills that we saw today, and not just do one direct kicking drill like we see in the Ippons, but let's do the 7 versions of the direct kicking drills. So I think the challenge for all of us is to not just look at the things that we've been trained, that have been put together in the Kwanmukan is, and these are things we have to do for a test. But this is a foundation for what we need to do for our training. And we all have to take that opportunity to think, well, how can I do things differently? How can I take Lucinda stepping back 3 Ippons into the 3 levels, where you're stance by stance by stance to, forget it, just roll with it so you can put it all together. It's probably a bad analogy and I'm rambling now, because I think that the big point is, how do we expose ourselves more to the training that we're supposed to train and not focus on this is what we were supposed to do?
Dan, would you bring 2 chairs up here so we have 5 chairs for these gentlemen? Or anybody else gather in? So they're not so separated. Leave the camera line kind of over. You guys have a seat. Okay, now. Make sure the camera's got a certain line of sight, you guys. Okay. Now, you guys I'm sure have questions, and I'm sure they're capable of answering. So on this topic of Ippon Kumite, start asking questions. Shihans, if they don't ask questions, give them a good finger. Go. Tracy, ask a question.
Trying to remember when I saw the part in my
Because your teacher probably didn't train you to do this. Shame on you.
What was your question?
I don't remember ever getting trained doing the 3-step Ippons.
So do you have any questions on how they should be done? Jeff, you can't sit there, that's the camera.
It's right behind you.
Remember, the 2 inside leaders are reserved.
what I filed that 3-step sparring into is water. or like, or coming in to something. You got 3 techniques to take it. I can go with time.
I think one of the things that offers you is,
Love it.
one of the things that offers you is the recognition that technique in itself is not enough, and sometimes it can collapse in the heat of, so maybe the formal stance isn't so important as getting out of the way of that second and third attack coming. So don't be distracted by shiny objects, right?
Find out what works and bring it back.
Yep.
We didn't address 5-step sparring today, and I learned originally that actually that's the original training, and the 1-step is a part of it because it reflects the Ippon, one
kill.
And that's a familiar kind of idea. Everybody recognizes that 5-step is a more primitive training than 1-step.
It's not familiar to me, but I understand what you're saying.
So what is the other saying?
Efficiency is where we want to go with our training. So if I could destroy you like that, as was talked about last night, this is everything from what I heard on the sidelines last night. It has to happen immediately and it has to be done. So I think what Bill was saying, the 5 steps, maybe a little beginner to feel it out, but when you go to the 1 steps, it's immediate. It just has to be spot on right there, and that's why it may be considered a more advanced form of
So are you saying that the 3 steps take too long? Are you saying that the 3 steps take too long?
No, I was just comparing the 5 steps to the 1-step. The 3 steps are kind of in the category themselves in our training, but the idea that you can end the fight instantly is the highest.
Oh yeah, but you see, the Ippon Kumite, isn't that part of a training tool?
it's a training framework.
Because you can do Ippon Kumite, Sanbon Kumite without a step, or 3 steps, or 1 step. Because, all the games dissociate the body parts. So you can't count the number of steps you take to the number of what movements you do. So it's, in the Japanese, it's common to block, cover, and then hit. So they block, redirect, and then they attack. That is a very common Shotokan concept in how they interpret Kwanmukan. You guys haven't technically done. Okay? Now, how long does it take to block, hit, and move? I just block, hit it, and how long did that take me to do? So don't get confused by how long the drill takes, or how long the application will take, as they learn to apply what they learned in the drill. Not apply the drill, what they learned in the drill. The drill is designed to teach. If you don't know the concept, you can't get it across. This is what we're trying to explain to you guys. Okay? It's not the dogma, not the standard, but the concept behind it. And the concept of what having an idea where you intend to go on this. Because where you may go may be different where than any of these guys go.
I have a question for Pam. What is the relationship between Ippon Kumites and all wasa in general and Kata Kumite?
And I always thought this was really in the manual, was the continued escalation of the Ippon Kumite into either hand, any weapon, to not just linear movement, but now you're doing circular movement and you're
So I want you to relate to the Kata and the Kumite. I understand the Ippon Kumite, but you're staying inside of one small facet and we're multifaceted.
I'm not sure what you're,
Well, I think what it's asking is, should you be able to go Ippon Kumite, or should you be Ippon Kumite with the framework of the Kata interpretation? If I got your question right.
That's in general, yeah.
Sir, with your question, the simple answer.
Oh, okay, this is what I was waiting for.
y'all be within timing?
I don't know, is it?
Yes, I would say yes.
It's the idea that kata, or rather that the wasa, no matter what, whether it be Ippon Kumite or any two-person drills, that it is the conduit between the conceptualization of principles of kata and the application of Kumite. These are conduits that can make the connection between one extreme and the other.
We should be able to take each movement from a kata and use it as an Ippon Kumite.
And not necessarily each movement. Not every single movement for specifics, but the concepts and the principles that Hanshi is talking about lie within the katas. The Kwanmukan in particular. You'll find everything that's inside of the Kwanmukan. It's right there. And it relates directly to Kumite. Not sport Kumite so much as diving dirty in the street and make fun.
Would you agree that like part of the training maturity that's happening is that recognition, integrated and related, to recognize that, well, there is an Ippon, here's a variable, and here's how you may fit into one of the concepts.
That's supposed to be a part of the ranking structure, so that as the ranking increases, your understanding increases, even though sometimes your physical ability decreases.
So interesting way to think about that is two-man kata.
Yeah.
And how is two-man kata, other than maybe the length of it and the complexity of it, different than an Ippon? It's not.
These are structures.
Yes.
That's the idea. Instead of compartmentalizing the four parts of Kwanmukan karate, that being Kihon, Wasa, Kata, and then Kumite. Instead of compartmentalizing, putting them all in their separate sections, understand that they are the quantum subject on the whole. And your understanding of each is necessary in order to really fathom Kwanmukan and its philosophy in the total.
He actually stole part of my question I was going to ask. I was going to ask about the some of our two-man drills that we do, the slaps and the punch, kick, yes, those. And I was going to ask where you would place that. If that would be in this compartment, or if it would where that would fall in our training, and how if that would be, if you felt that we were leaving that out from this part of our training, or where in our training that should be. So, I don't know if that question would come around, but you answered it because it is integrated throughout.
It's a relation. So often these were referred to, I think, as relationship drills. Relationship, one person relating to another, one person doing one thing and the other person doing another thing. And I think when you use that kind of framework, it's Kumite, it's Ippon Kumites, it's two-person kata, it's the self-defense drills, it's relationship drills. If you're playing an air, as we often do kata, we have to employ our imagination. If you change the framework a little bit, and now you got a second person, you explore the same thing, just you add a little vanilla flavoring and salt and pepper. Right?
So when you were teaching, when you teach those drills, do you teach them as you're teaching your one-steps, or do you teach them separate, in a separate section, or how is that?
When I have been teaching, they would be compartmentalized.
Okay.
So
I think there's
I don't think that's right.
Each one of those has a different dynamic that really doesn't, like, when you're talking about the bomb box, is that what you're talking about?
No, I'm talking about the slack ones.
Relationships. So,
If you look at the chart that I provided, there's some general categories that I came up with some general descriptions, yeah. And, you can categorize as you wish, okay? I just tried to come up with some generalities to show you that, you have your warm-up, your cool-down, you have your logical type things, and then we have the teaching part of the class and the learning part of the class. And so I stuck some categories in there that we commonly use. So you can either add a new category there or put your idea on one of the other ones. It's just a way to try to help you organize your thoughts. So really, it's more about you organizing your thoughts and being able to, from your plus during class time, I think, and feel comfortable about it in your own skin. And I don't, you stick it there where you want, from my perspective. There's not any pull down to warm-ups.
There were two things on that chart of the Ippon Kumites that I don't think we explored. And one was prearranged, and the other one was free. Right? And again, it's just a variation on the theme. I think you were getting close to the free when you were taking the 3 attacks the third time, right?
Well, we did discuss the concept of formal and semi-formal, free and semi-free. Or formal and semi-free. Free would enter into the aspect of the Kumite.
Kumite, exactly.
One of the things I think you need to look at is those 7 key words: strong, consistent, internal standards, quantifiable, integrated, related. The fact of the matter being, why do we move the way we do with the Kwanmukan? Why have we selected the Kumite that we have? Why do we do the Watson the way we do? Stoner doesn't do the same thing we do. The Okinawan variety doesn't do the same thing we do. We do certain things that come specifically out of our Symposium background that are not within the Shotokan, even though Symposium is extrapolated from Shotokan. So this is the idea, when people just start going off in spurious katas, well, this kata wins. Well, katas don't win. It's how you perform the kata, frankly. And if you start doing katas that go against the movement of your system, you can screw your body. So this is why we have a certain canon of kata within our framework. So we move in that specific form. And then everything else that we do is an offshoot of that principle of movement. This is what I was talking about in the relationship of the wasa to the kumite and the kata. We move in a certain way in kumite. The styles don't move that way. They move differently. So this is the problem with you send students into tournaments and they see somebody doing something they think looks cool. So they try to imitate that, not realizing that they're really going to mess themselves up because we're not designed to move in that particular form. So again, finding the principles of the kata, looking at the principles that are held within the Ippon Kumite, so you can relate them to the kata and relate them to the kumite, and thereby make a holistic approach to training. Otherwise, you've got 4 separate subjects that are not related in any way, shape, or form. So much for the interrelated idea of the 7 words. Don't ask me to give you the reader's digest.
What I take of this is you're talking concepts. You start out very slowly, and you keep increasing the speed of the concepts. No matter how you're standing, no matter what attack you do, you're training your body. You cannot think fast enough to save yourself. But your body will save you because it knows how to move no matter where it finds itself. It has already done that and done that attack.
To think that in the words of George Anderson, you will do under pressure which you practice. The way you train has everything to do with how you're going to move, how you're going to act, so thought is unnecessary. And if we abide by the principles of the samurai, it's supposed to be unification of thought through action. So the mind is thinking at the same time the body is already in motion.
Yeah.
You don't have time to think and say, oh, I should do that. Too late, you're not going to do it again. You have to be in motion. And how does that come about? By looking at the interrelationship of everything and trying to keep that in your mind as you're training. Now, of course, we're talking to black belts at this point, so these are concepts that are way beyond the cues. I'm not talking about teaching juniors at this point. But I'm talking about your own individualized approach to your training.
So,
Sure, I'm not all down. You can ask me a question.
well, I was going to make a reference. I think
You can ask a panel question if you're on the panel.
Gian Whalen, I'm sure remembers this. Gian Ellis remembers this. Last time Haji Anderson was teaching a master's class, for the very first of the 32, which are called linear drawings. So when I first learned the small step. The last time he taught it, it was there was no foot movement, there was a collapse, a coil, and another coil. So I'm not sure what that means, but that's what happened.
But it could be simply agent on brakes.
Could be.
It's all about that. It's, so that drill we did last night, that's the extension of that. That's that. Without the hand, it's just an explosion from where you are, right here, right now, because there's not time. So that was that. Shihan Ames was talking about the relationship of one technique to another technique to another technique. The point is, there is an interrelationship. And it's everything that Shihan Smith talked about last night with the dynamic sphere, moving as a whole. But that's an extension of that. Shihan Ames was just talking about a principal concept, and then an offshoot of that concept that manifests itself in a technique. That was the manifestation of that technique that we did last night. But it speaks to the interrelationship.
In saying that, as we went over last night, you have to get an understanding, once again, everything that you do when it comes to body positioning, movement, kinesiology, you have to understand this is a science and a formula behind everything that you do. And the one thing that Master Anderson would emphasize, I see a lot of you doing the Ippon Kumite. Great learning tool, very good learning tool. But if you extend back on some of the origins of where it derived from, or where it came from, in Japanese culture, they have the lead proposition of the katana, the sword, the bushido, the samurai. These concepts from Karate Do actually is an extension of the sword. A lot of their culture is based upon that. I've been very fortunate to be trained with a master dealing with Kendo and some Aikido over in the Pittsburgh area. And open our eyes to some of more of the information and how the two, empty hand versus the weapon, how it actually correlates. And as I was watching you depending on one attack, two attack, or three attack, the one simple thing I remember Master Anderson used to always bring out, this always tickled me after we would articulate what we're trying to do and what is our objective on the accomplishment of getting to that target to hit it, to do damage. Your main objective is to, first of all, to stop the initial threat. The most dangerous threat is the first threat that comes towards you. You got to stop it. So I'm going to ask you now, as a group, what are the 7 points anatomically on the body that stops forwarding progress? Point them out. You can touch your anatomy or whatever you want, or just roll it out. There's 7. Huh?
Knees.
Right, you're talking about.
No, stop forwarding progress. That means that person is keyed up and he's going to do simple Gakuzuki or Ozuki coming right at you, reckless abandon to stop that. Now, a Telewasa, more close quarter combat. So we're so tight, yeah, then those are things that you can actually do. But when it has full mass momentum coming at you, to stop it.
Knees.
Yeah, the patellas, 1, 2, even more.
Breaking the chain.
Say it again?
Breaking the chain. Anywhere along that chain of power, if you break
Well,
the
you
chain.
want to be more specific, because just like in shooting, what will take the individual down on impact of that bullet is the vital areas, okay? That bullet penetrates, that's what usually will drop that individual, okay? Forward progress, the patella, 1, 2. The pelvic region, and you wear your orbits right now. You breathe and you move from the heart, or the haragiri. But that pelvic region is essential because of the lower versus the upper. If you have that not in synchronization with your movement, you're not going too far or too fast. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, there you go. 5, 6, 7. Those are the points. And one thing that Master Anderson used to always bring out, he says, okay, keep it simple. That's why a lot of times you'll see who do like one technique as you're coming at them and will stop you cold. Understanding, what I said yesterday, understanding the science. With the swordsmanship. My good friend right here, Master Abrams. Sin no sin, go no sin, kaka no sin. These are one of the steps that we do. So as a person is facing us that's going to attack us, we have certain principles where we'll cross the point of no return. Point of no return is an imaginary line that separates you from the opponent. So depending on your action, but also depending on time and distance. So if that person is doing that samurai walk and they're inching up on you, you have your zone. Your zone is different from my zone. Where you feel comfortable on that immediate element of surprise, that attack. Element of surprise. Another principle. Those we may be meeting for the first time. And maybe you hate my guts. But you're greeting me, say, oh yeah, how you doing, man? And as soon as you touch my hand, you came in for a sucker punch. You had an element of surprise. Element of surprise is number 1. You have a difficult time defending against that. So therefore you have to keep some sort of distance, okay? And of course we get into that, that's a whole other realm. Dealing with the reactionary gap, which is very much real, which we also teach in warfare, we teach in law enforcement, which is an extension of military, it's paramilitary action.
Let's go back to the original question, okay, if you don't mind. The original question was, basically, what's a linear drop? Why do you do a linear drop without moving? We are, as you get older, you don't move unless you have to. Some of us are starting to recognize that. So we start to adapt for things. But let's look at the training. How much power does it take to hurt somebody? How much energy? How much force? Whatever you want to use. What does it take? Do you need to be able to create your maximum force all the time to hurt somebody? Not necessarily, but you got to use enough force to your target area, or something has to happen, okay? All right, so, think about this. Does anybody have a 40-pound sandbag thrown at them? And you catch it, and you put it here, and you turn and catch the next one. Is there a good impact on a 40-pound sandbag? Yeah, if you turn all of a sudden 40-pound sandbag, so you're going to notice it. Okay? So, can I move 40 pounds of my body without moving my feet? Absolutely. All I need to do is move the body weight to create the energy and send the energy. So when he does this, he's creating he's opening his body up, and you've got all this body weight dropping into place. And the more you can drop, some you can drop maybe only 40%, some you might be able to drop 80 or 100%. So you might be able to relax enough to drop it all. Then you add speed to it, and the concept of focus, which you've been training all your life, you have to move your feet to hit hard. But it's definitely more difficult skill than to move your body and move the weight by moving your body. You see what I'm saying? So, I think Mr. Harrison's about just hitting people. I mean, you like to do it. Okay, again, so boom, again, he's moved his feet. Because you see, he did a weight transfer. So what is a weight transfer? Moving weight from one foot to the other. So if I move a weight transfer to this foot, it doesn't mean I can't still send energy out there, depending upon my head, lowering my body, you know. So I learned how to try to take that effect. So if you're spinning down low and you stand up, all of a sudden your energy goes up here because you're standing up, it just dissipates and you quit spinning. Those are known things that sports use in what they train, which can have applicability in the karate. Okay? And that is learning how to create energy. The more efficient you become at it, the less you have to move to create it. Now, I find it hard that in a situation you won't move your feet. Because I think you will. Because I think that the initial reaction to the situation will cause you to do that in most instances. You'll start yourself. And then you have to gain control and fast and then apply these other principles. And the better you're able to provide us principles from an autonomous perspective, which is one word to summarize everything he just said. Okay? Then the better you are, and that becomes your training effect. Okay? And that's how I perceive the answer to your question. It's a matter of your technique. How good your technique is, what you're able to take the energy that you think you take and send it efficiently. So, we used to have what we call dead weight technique. Now, you won't remember this because this predated with Anderson. You should remember this. And we would practice dead weight technique. Remember that? That hit pretty hard, didn't it? But then we never continued the dead weight technique, which is the whole purpose of the training. If you're dead weight, it means you mostly understand the concept that your body is relaxed. And you just dead weight. Dead weight has nothing holding it up. So if you get hit with dead weight, you're hitting with your entire body weight. Yeah, you should be able to make a pretty hard punch pretty easily if you practice that. Okay? So, if you wish, we're getting close to calling it. We didn't do all the Kumite stuff. We did hit some of the Kumite topics. So, what we're going to do, okay. Yeah, do that to help.
One of the things I think was missing today, in practice of Ippon Kumite, and to sum up what Chad Smith was saying, surprise, quickness, violence is the attack. But quickness is what's been lacking today. Now, first of all, illustrated and demonstrated when utilizing Ippon Kumite as a practice of will application, the hand should chamber to here, not here. This is a practice method for full range body action and for developing the joints, but it should be from here. And then it's got to explode. I didn't see that today at all. So, mass times acceleration equals force. If you want to hit harder, you got to hit faster. Then from there, we'll talk about penetration. But that requires that extreme body contraction, and that will naturally, especially if you're grabbing the floor with your toes, I don't care if you have shoes on, you can still grab with your toes. That's going to drop your body immediately into dead weight. So you're going to be hitting that. That will accelerate your hands and create by far greater force. I don't care how strong you are, I don't care if you can bench press 400 pounds, yeah, you're going to have a hard punch no matter what. But if your punch is slow and pushy, it's not going to have anywhere near what you can have with that excessive speed. Sugar Ray Leonard proved that being the first lightweight knockout fighter that there was. And he studied all of Bruce Lee's actions. He was the first lightweight to actually start to pull the shoulders down and lock into the lats and lock into the abdomen. Now all boxers. That's a major premise of karate. So you've really got to remember that speed. And where should the hand go? Where should your hand be? Why do we have the hand up instead of down? These are all ideas that you have to think about. Why is the hand here, not down here? You get hit in the xiphoid process, that thing penetrates, it can puncture your lung, or it can penetrate internal organs, and therefore it's a lethal punch. Protected. It's not down here. I'd like to know what this is. I see it all the time. And then from here, just a slight shift. And you have our Kumite Kumite. So everything should relate to each other. Interrelated. Your kata must relate to your wasu, which must relate to your kumite. There has to
be in your relationship. Otherwise, like I said before, you have 4 separate subjects that mean nothing.
Can I add to that?
What time is it?
When I watch,
We're only gonna have, right now, we're down to a 9-minute break.
okay, when I watch, there's 2 people up there practicing. What did the Uki do? Go like this? The Uki's he's not defending himself. This is Ippon Kumite. You're teaching yourself Ippon. The Uki should come in this way, 1, 2. His shoulders would be up by his chin, his hands would be up here like this. Right? The double counter's coming, when the double counter comes in, the other hand shifts up. Things should shift back and forth. Otherwise, what are we training for? We're training to get hit. That's what I did. I see that all across, all day today, and every time I go to a testing. You know, the hand should be up on the Uki point.
Great point, great point.
Okay, so what we're gonna do is, we've discussed some of the Kumite parts already. Hip movement, energy fitness, muscular fitness. We talked energy steps for learning Kumite is the delineation of Kumite, which is what we touched on. I didn't go into that chart because it shows how you can use Ippon Kumite to progress or teach your Kumite and have the standpoint of right Kumite. Okay? So what we'll do at 5 o'clock, when we take that 5 o'clock break, is those that don't want to eat dinner, we'll just go through the rest of the week and that time, and put that in there so we cover that material. It'll be optional to use if you want to do it. Okay?
Great,
Other than that, we have about 5 minutes to take a break, and we'll start with 5.
great.